guys, Scott Ulmer here. I am on video number 4 in the series here, breaking down a property on Wilson that we're buying, and it's a full rehab potential. I'm going to go through on this video what the exit strategies are. So number 1, how we're going to attack the rehab, what the strategy and psychology behind the rehab is going to be, and then ultimately how we price it based on that, number 1. And number 2 is the different ways and different options that we have to sell it. I'm going to go through those and break those down and give you kind of the comparisons and see what makes the most sense. So let me go ahead and go to the whiteboard here. So the property we have, just as a recap, is on Wilson. Now in this video you'll have an opportunity to see the playlist of the prior videos. You can reference those back, in particular the walkthrough of the renovations and how we broke it down room by room and costs. So just as a recap, we've got an acquisition cost of $130,000. The ARV, which is the after repaired value, that's what the house will be worth when it's fully fixed up. What it comps at compared to nice properties is $230,000. That's today's value, what it would comp at if it were fully fixed up. And the rehab as a whole is $40,000. And again, refer back to some of the prior videos if you want to see how we came up with that number. Now, I've got to tell you, in our world, $40,000 is a pretty sizable rehab. Now, depending on where you live and the caliber or price point of the home, that could be a bathroom for a home that's $1 million, right? But for a house that is in this price range in Florida, $40,000 gets us a really long way. I said this on a prior video. If you're just starting out or haven't done a rehab yet, going into a major rehab is something that I advise against. It can burn you out very quickly. That's how you can lose money. Contractors can take you for a ride. All those things can happen, and that's when you can lose real money in real estate. So always be cautious before jumping into a big rehab if it is your first one. So, all right, these are the numbers. We've broken down the rehab, we've walked the house, we know what each room is going to cost, what the overarching cost is going to be for all of the rehab should we go that route. So the big question is, what do we do? Do we want to go full scale and end up putting $40,000 into it, and how does the math break down? So let me go ahead and start on this side. So the way we have framed it is we have 3 options on how we want to exit this property. So these are the exit strategies for the renovation on the property on Wilson. Number 1, and I want to start with this, what's called work for equity. It's a great strategy. Work for equity is very simple. What that means is that you are leaving equity on the table, the difference between what it's worth and what you're selling it for, to a buyer to come in and put work into the property themselves and ultimately increase their equity position. So you're giving them a better price, but the agreement is that they're going to do work on the property themselves. And by the way, it's no different than you would do with a contractor. You'll have a work scope that says, all right, these 5 items are going to be done by this date. And then you check on those 5 items. Then the next 5 items are going to be done on a subsequent date. You'll check on that as well. When it comes to contractors, it's no different. Their draw schedule is predicated on the work scope. So if it's a contractor, these 5 items, once they are done and inspected and approved by you, will trigger the next draw. You don't give someone all the money up front. In fact, you don't give someone more than they need for the first draw and materials. That's how you keep yourself from getting in trouble with contractors. In this case, if you're going to let someone step into a property and do work themselves to increase their equity position, you've got to make sure they're doing the work. Otherwise, it's for naught. Now, let's look at the math here. The way it sits, and if you saw the video, it's kind of rough. In fact, if you could smell through the camera, you could smell it had that smell of what we call money, but many other people call it maybe urine and cats and all sorts of things that make up smells when you walk into vacant homes. By the way, I said this at the property, when I smell that, I smell one thing: money. And most people can't get past that. They walk in and say, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I don't even want to be in the house. Those are houses you can make a lot of money in. You can always get rid of the smell. Don't forget that. Pull the carpets up, you'll be amazed. Now, the way it sits, let's be frank, it's not really attractive. There's crap in the yard, there's kind of garbage throughout the house. The carpets are terrible. Underneath the carpets are hardwood. Just by picking the house up and pulling the carpet back and doing some very basic cosmetic things would certainly enhance the appealability of the house and likely the sale in a quicker fashion. But when people pull up right now, it's hard to see the value based on the way that everything is sitting there, in particular some of the trash and things in the yard. So selling it as is without touching it is a tough sale. It's a tough sale. You're going to have people that have to look past all of those things up front in order to express interest in pursuing the purchase. So if we sold it as is today, didn't touch it, pure work for equity as it sat, we don't think we can get more than 165 for the property. Okay? Now, if its ARV is 230, yes, 130 is the purchase price, which means we've only got about a $35,000 margin. And maybe on paper or stating it sounds like a big margin, but when you look at the other options, this one is really, to me, the least attractive for us to sell it. I think we would get in and out and we would leave money on the table, certainly, and I don't think we would maximize the sale. However, work for equity, when you buy them and you let them without touching them, can be viable. But I got to tell you, if we put just a couple bucks into it, option number 2, partial rehab work for equity. So again, we're going to give a break on the price to our buyer, give them the opportunity to come in, do work themselves, increase value, create equity. So in this case, if we put $5,000 into it, clean up the yard, pull the carpets out, there's some mechanical work that we want to do in the electric, just make it prettier. Make it more presentable, make it more appealable, we think we could sell it for 180. So now if you do the math, we've got 130 as a price and we put $5,000 into it and we sell it for 180, now we've got about a $45,000 profit margin. So right now we're already $10,000 higher than we would be had we sold it in a pure work for equity as it sat. What we think we're going to do, and I'm going to get to the bottom here in just a second, is if we put $10,000 into it, which would encompass some mechanicals, we might even paint the outside. Painting, by the way, can be done by most people. So when it comes to work for equity, much of the work is cosmetic or can be cosmetic. Carpet sometimes, paint certainly, some flooring, depending on the ability of the buyer. They may be able to do a lot of things, but when you have a cosmetic opportunity for someone to come in and just do the cosmetics, most people are capable of doing that. And again, opportunity for the buyer that can do some work, they can get a better price, and again, create equity, create value through doing some work. So in this case, if we pay 130, we put 10 in it, now we're in it for 140, and we sell it at 200, which we believe we can, the buyer gets 30 grand in equity right off the bat, and we now have a better margin. Now we're at $60,000 as a gross margin before expenses and things like that, cost of money, taxes, insurance, etc. So as you see, as we go up the run a little bit, the values or the profit potential seems to be greater when we do a couple things to the property. And of course, the third option, or maybe the fourth option, depending on how you want to parse that, is to do the full-scale rehab, which is what we intended to when we took on the job or took on the property. Now, I've got to tell you, when you do a full-scale rehab, there's obviously time involved. Most contractors don't meet deadlines on time. We actually incentivize our contractors to finish on time. So we give them a bonus not to finish early, to finish on time. Now, I've also penalized contractors when they don't finish on time, but I have found that that doesn't always pan out to be the best, because ultimately, if you're taking from them, even though it's in writing right up front, if you come in on time, I'm going to give you a bonus, and if you come in after that time, we're going to subtract X amount of dollars per day, whether it's $50 or $100 or some flat fee. I have found that it usually gets taken out on the house. So you can play hardball, and maybe it's not even playing hardball, it's just having a contractual deadline with a bonus on time and a penalty past it. But just be cautious. Ultimately, if the contractor is getting money taken out of their check, in the end, it usually comes out of the house. That's just been my experience. So having said that, maximum dollar would typically say full rehab. So let's go ahead and just look at the gross numbers. Pay 130, put 40 into it, we're in it for 170. If we think we can sell it at 230, and I'm going to share with you the exit strategies here in just a second, now you're talking about a $60,000 margin again. So if we could get $60,000 on a margin here by putting 10 into it, which is probably going to take us 2 to 3 weeks, or get $60,000 and have a project that might take 2 or 3 months, right there, the time value of money would say that the partial rehab work for equity is the better play. Now, it's never black and white, guys. It's going to be individual to the property, the things that the property needs, the length, or I should say the scope of the rehab, how extensive is it. So you always have options, but it's good to know what the options are. And so these are 3 really, really good viable options that we're going to look at undertaking. So question becomes, what makes the most sense for the property, and certainly the cost of the money, the availability of the money. Obviously, the quicker the money is in, the quicker you can deploy it to the next property. And so there are a lot of things to think about. But these are the three options that we're looking at. So let me go ahead and go to the other side of the board and just give you the exit strategies and the ways that we sell them. So the first is terms. Now, in the next video, I'm going to break down why terms are our favorite. And so the benefit of terms are several. Number one, you get a full price offer in most cases, and I will tell you this, if the ARV today is $230,000, I can guarantee you we're going to take it out to our terms buyers at $239,900. There's a premium when we're basically carrying back payments. Number one, it's $230,000 today. The buyer on terms locks in the price today. They will not need to get a mortgage for probably 12 to 18 months down the road. So they're locking in the price today, assuming there's appreciation continuing. The $230,000 is what they are today value. We're going to sell it at $239,900. So instantaneously on a term sale, we just created another $10,000 in profit to our bottom line. With terms buyers, you have a bigger pool of buyers. There's a lot more people that are looking for terms than can do traditional with a bank. You get a full price offer. You typically get a quicker sale. You have no repairs once the buyer is into the property. All repairs and maintenance pass to the buyer. We negotiate closing costs, so we don't have to pay the buyer's closing costs. That's about 3%. We get payments every month from the buyer that don't get credited off of what they owe. So I'm going to break all this down in the next video. You're going to see why we like terms more than any other sale. And at the end of the day, there are 5 paydays when you sell on terms, and you really maximize the profit potential. I will also tell you one of the my favorite things on terms that I teach often is the difference in a short-term versus long-term capital gain. Any sort of short-term capital gain is defined as buying and selling something within a calendar year. So if you buy a house and you sell within 12 months, you're going to get taxed anywhere from 35 to 40%. If that sale is outside of a 12-month calendar year, so 366 days, your capital gain goes from 35 to 40 down to about 15. You're literally cutting 20% off your bottom line, or I should say adding 20% to profit if you can cut your short-term capital gain in half and convert it to a long-term capital gain. If that was too complicated, let us know. We'll explain it more in another video, but that's a really big deal that most people don't talk about. In fact, I've never heard in my 25 years another flipper talk about the difference between a short-term and a long-term capital gain. And if you play your cards right and you have a buyer that can help you get to that 366 days, you just added 20% to your bottom line. That's some of the reasons we like selling on terms. Now, true flippers, they buy them for cash, renovate them, they sell them for cash. Nothing wrong with that. Yes, they're taking about a 35 to 40% hit. However, cash in, cash out, let's go to the next deal. So flippers like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I've got to tell you, number 3 is a flat fee MLS listing. Wherever you live, flat fee MLS listings are usually about $100. It's a broker that just puts it onto the MLS, the multiple listing service. That's what the realtors reference. There's no support, there's no guidance. You just have the exposure, and so that's why it's so cheap. Nowadays, with Zillow and all of the other platforms that we market on, I don't really know the need for a flat fee exists as it did maybe a few years ago. All of the realtors are looking at the same places that we're marketing. So I just don't know that I see a need for you to do a flat fee, but we do have people that do them. We've done them ourselves, and it does get exposure to the agents that are looking. So again, you're only going to pay about $100 for the flat fee, but part of the flat fee listing is you're agreeing to pay a co-broke, which is an agent that brings you a buyer, typically 3%. Yes, you can negotiate that, but in most cases, the expectation from the realtor bringing a buyer is it's going to be a 3% co-broke commission. So understand that even though you have a flat fee, you're almost certainly going to attract a realtor that's going to bring a buyer that's expecting to get paid. So it's more than just the $100, it's usually 2 or 3%. And of course, number 4 is a pure list and sell. And again, if you don't want to deal with buyers, you don't want to have showings and open houses and all the things that encompass buyers, and you want to go ahead and bite the bullet and give an agent the ability to sell it, you're going to pay 5 to 6%. You have 3% on the list and 3% on the sell. You can negotiate that a little bit. If you can get better than 5% as a whole, you're doing pretty good. Rule of thumb, average is 6%. And the realtor cartel, as it was called in an article I read recently, was actually in front of Congress. And they were kind of getting chastised for why they're getting paid 6%. And you start adding up, especially higher dollar homes, boy, that 6% really can be expensive. And many realtors are phenomenal, do a great job. Others are not as much, and they'll put a sign in the yard and not do a lot of other work, let another realtor sell it, at which point 6% may not feel as fair as maybe it should. So that 6% is not going to be here forever. I'm going to make a prediction and tell you the days of 6% commissions are limited. Now that may be 5 more years and maybe 10 more years, but at some point with the way things are going now and how you can market on all these platforms, why would you pay 6% when you can almost receive the same exposure by just having it out on normal channels? Now, realtors can do a great job. I don't want to take away from that, but you're paying a lot for that service. And so these are the options that we look at. Again, some of this can be predicated on your situation at the time. If you've got another deal that you want to get into, maybe cashing out a deal makes sense. If you have the ability to work with a buyer who can make payments for 12 to 18 months, which means however you're paying for the house in the rehab, your loan, I assume it's not your money because we don't use your own money, we use other people's money, private loans, sometimes institutional, but as long as you have time on your loan to allow a buyer to make payments to you and get a mortgage over time, you're going to make the most money hands down on a terms deal. If you can sell it for yourself for a cash buyer or a traditional buyer, someone who's pre-approved, has a bank loan, and you don't have to pay any commissions, that's not bad. You're going to get a lower price than a terms deal. You're going to probably get an offer. And as a traditional buyer, they're looking at every other property that compares to this, and they have their choice of every other property. Terms buyers don't have their choice of every property. So they have to ultimately love the house that you're selling them, but they don't have a bunch of other options if they want to buy in that area. And so you have a quicker sale typically and a less picky buyer in many cases. You're going to be competing against every other house, and so you do have pickier buyers and you need to be aware of that. You're going to get a little more scrutinized on the cash sale, but ultimately if you can eliminate any realtor, you're going to come out ahead. Flat fee should be just one commission, not two, not a list and a sell, really just a sell. And of course the list is going to be the most expensive of the 4 different options, 5 to 6%. Depending on your situation, is likely going to depend on how you exit the deal. So I'm going to break these down in greater detail. I'm going to tell you exactly why this is the best one. By far, by the way, you're going to see the math here on the next video, but I just wanted to give the exit strategies. Do we list? Do we cash out? Do we sell on terms? And what does that look like? And again, when you're doing the rehab, really look at the different scenarios. You may be surprised how many people would love to step into a property that needs some work that they can do to get a much better value. In fact, we sold a lot like this in the past, and what we would do is say, okay, if you want a full rehab, it's this price, or if you want a partial rehab, it's this price, which is a lot lower. What do you think people chose almost every time? The lower price, because they felt they could create value, create equity by doing some work, and of course, that's the whole purpose of it, and they were able to. So different types of rehabs and different types of sale prices and different types of exit strategies. So that concludes this video. I'm going to break these down on the next one. I will see you then. Thank you. I see you've been watching our videos, and I want to give you a big thank you. If you've ever wanted to get into real estate investing, there's never been a better time than now. Click the link below for more information on how you can work with myself and my team, or visit pinkaffiliates.com. That's pinkaffiliates.com. We have a variety of options for you to get started at whatever level you are interested in. Click the link below, visit pinkaffiliates.com, and see what Pink can do for you.